We now invite you to join us for part 5 of the rebroadcast of the live conference with Supreme Master Ching Hai, titled Humanity's Leap to the Golden Era, Washington, D.C. Climate Change Conference on November 8, 2009, in Washington, D.C., USA.
Warning, you might find the content herein disturbing, but the truth must be revealed.
Dr. Michael Greger is a medical doctor and the Director of Public Health and Animal Agriculture for the Humane Society of the United States. He is a foremost authority on swine flu and many other types of diseases. Dr. Greger is the author of the book Bird Flu, a virus of our own hatching. He is also a vegan. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Michael Greger.
Thank you. Good afternoon. According to the Director General of the World Health Organization, the 3 greatest threats facing humanity, number 1 is the global food crisis. Climate change is number 2, and pandemic influenza is number 3, all of which have to do with our food choices. The current pandemic has killed thousands of people, but in a world in which millions continue to die of diseases like AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, why is there so much concern about this so-called swine flu? Because apparently the last time a nearly entirely new flu virus jumped species and caused a pandemic, it went on to become the deadliest plague in human history. The influenza pandemic of 1918, most flu strains tend to spare young, healthy adults. The 1918 virus killed people in the prime of life. In 1918, more than a quarter of all Americans fell ill. This is a chart of percent of population dying here in the States. In 1918, as many as 50 to 100 million people lost their lives. A similar virus today could kill many, many more. What started for millions around the globe as muscle aches and a fever ended days or even hours later. Homeless orphans, their parents gone, wandered the empty streets. One agonized official in the stricken East sent an urgent warning west, quote, "Hunt up your woodworkers and set them to making coffins, then take your street laborers and set them to digging graves." This is a clipping from the New York Times at the time. Victims of plague everywhere, great pyres of bodies consumed by the flames. That 1918 flu virus killed more people in 25 weeks than AIDS has killed in 25 years. No war, no plague, no famine has ever killed so many people in so short of time as the 1918 pandemic. Where did it come from? The conventional wisdom is that the 1918 pandemic was triggered when an H1N1 bird virus in its entirety, all 8 gene segments, jumped into human beings. We then apparently passed it along to pigs, sickening millions of them as well. Now, after the pandemic, when our immune systems got used to the new virus, it turned into the regular seasonal flu, and in pigs, it turned to what we call classic or classical swine flu. Before 1918, we have no reports ever of any pigs coming down with the flu at all. So throughout the roaring 20s, people got the regular flu every year, and pigs got the swine flu. Same thing with the 30s, and the same with the 40s. The important thing to notice, though, is that swine flu remained stable throughout, unchanging throughout the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s in North America, and stable throughout the 1980s. But then by 1999, everything changed. A never-before-described triple species flu virus arose. The classic swine flu virus, after being stable for 80 years straight, picked up 3 gene segments from the circulating human flu virus, and then 2 gene segments from a bird flu virus to create the first triple animal reassortment virus ever described. Our first hybrid, a human-pig viral mutant, was discovered on an industrial pig operation in Newton Grove, North Carolina in August 1998, owned by a massive pork conglomerate by the name of Hogslat. The virus mutated further and then spread without months throughout the United States. Soon it spread into Canada, and by 2003, the majority of animals tested in industrial pig operations in Mexico also showed evidence of exposure to our triple hybrid strain. We then exported it to Asia, and apparently the favor has been returned. After reshuffling with the classic swine flu, our made in the USA triple reassortment virus picked up 2 gene segments from a Eurasian swine flu lineage to create the flu pandemic of 2009. The primary progenitor, the main ancestor of our current pandemic flu virus, as shown in orange here, is the triple hybrid mutant that emerged and spread throughout factory farms in the United States more than a decade ago. 6 out of the 8 gene segments, 3/4 of our current pandemic virus, straight from our triple hybrid. In this diagram, these data are from the most comprehensive genetic analysis of this virus to date. Now, influenza experts have been warning about this triple hybrid mutant for years, what they call an extremely promiscuous mammalian-adapted virus. Flu scientists used to only worry about Southeast Asia, but given the appearance of that triple hybrid mutant, now we need to look in our own backyard for where the next pandemic may appear, and 6 years later, it indeed did. After 8 decades of stability, what happened in the 1990s that led to these unprecedented changes in swine flu? And the same question with bird flu. No human deaths from avian influenza for 8 decades until 1997, when H5N1 starting killing people in Hong Kong. And then H7N7, bird flu, emerged in the Netherlands, which went on to infect 1,000 people and ended up being transmitted efficiently from person to person. Just 2 examples of new bird flu viruses infecting people. Now, in poultry, the number of outbreaks of highly pathogenic, highly disease-causing strains in the first few years of this century has already exceeded the total number of outbreaks recorded for the entire 20th century. As one leading flu scientist told Science, we've gone from a few snowflakes to an avalanche. What has been happening in recent years to trigger these kind of unprecedented changes in both swine and chicken flu viruses? Let's ask the world's leading expert, Dr. Robert Webster, as did the senior correspondent of NewsHour with Jim Lehrer. Was there something qualitatively different about this last decade made it possible for this disease to do something it's never done before, some kind of changing conditions that suddenly lit a match to the tinder? Webster replied. He says farming practices have changed. He talks about growing up on a farm, but he says now we put millions of chickens into a chicken factory next door to a pig factory. And this virus has the opportunity to get into one of these chicken factories and make billions and billions of mutations continuously. And so what we've changed is the way we raise animals. 5 years ago, the world's 3 leading authorities got together for a joint consultation. The World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the United Nations, and the World Organization for Animals Health, the world's leading veterinary authority. And their job was to uncover the key underlying causes of all these new animal-to-human diseases. Number 1 on their list in themes of risk factors was this increasing demand for animal protein the world over. Animals were domesticated 10,000 years ago, but never before like this, especially pigs and poultry. Chickens used to peck around the barnyard, but now chickens raised for meat are typically warehoused in sheds containing tens of thousands of birds. Half of the egg-laying hens on our planet are now confined in what are called battery cages. These small barren wire enclosures extending down long rows in windowless sheds can be up to 1 million birds on a single farm. About half the world's pig population is currently confined in these industrial confinement operations. These intensive systems represent the most profound alteration of the human-animal relationship in 10,000 years. Now, the industry is slowly waking up to the growing realization that viruses previously innocuous to natural host species have in all probability become more virulent by passes through these large commercial populations. This is from an international trade journal. This is not, arguably, how animals were meant to live. So how does the poultry industry feel about the possibility of its own so-called factory farms leading to a pandemic that could kill millions of people? Well, the executive editor of Poultry magazine wrote an editorial on just that topic. The prospect of a virulent flu to which we have absolutely no resistance is frightening. However, to me, the threat is much greater to the poultry industry. I'm not as worried about the U.S. human population dying from bird flu as I am that there will be no chicken to eat, said the executive editor of Poultry magazine. There are at least 10 reasons why industrial pork production can present such a breeding ground for disease. The operation in Newton Grove, North Carolina, where the ancestor of the current pandemic virus was first detected, was a breeding facility in which thousands of sows were confined in what are called gestation crates, also known as sow stalls. These are veal crate-like barren metal cages about 2 feet wide. These highly intelligent social creatures basically being kept in a box week after week, month after month, for nearly their entire lives. They can develop crippling joint deformities, lameness. I mean, if we did this to a dog, you'd get thrown in jail. Not only can these pregnant pigs not turn around, they can really barely move at all. Now, the rise in stress hormone levels in these so-called crated sows is thought to be because of the interference with natural maternal behaviors like nest building, which they can't do in a cage. And this frustration of maternal behavior has been shown experimentally to result in impaired immunity. Now, the National Livestock and Meat Board defends intensive confinement in a pamphlet called Facts from the Meat Board. Confinement rearing has its precedents. Schools are an example of confinement rearing of children, they say. Not that different from how they described veal crates as being similar to a baby's crib. The fact that the industry feels the need to mislead consumers by conjuring images of classrooms and baby cribs speaks to how far out of step animal agriculture has gone from just, mainstream basic decency towards animals. And interestingly, they know it. As Professor Emeritus of Animal Science wrote in one of his college textbooks, one of the best things modern animal agriculture has going for it is that most people haven't a clue how animals are raised. For modern animal agriculture, the less the consumer knows, the better. What can we do to prevent this kind of thing in the future, which is why we're all here today? The United Nations has urged all governments, local authorities, international agencies need to take a greatly increased role in combating the role of factory farming, which combined with these live bird markets that provide, in their words, ideal conditions for the flu virus to spread and mutate into a more dangerous form. These factory farms can be thought of as the original incubators for dangerous strains of the flu. More than 5 years ago, the American Public Health Association, the largest and oldest association of public health professionals in the world, called for a moratorium on factory farming. No more factory farms. In 2007, the Journal of the APHA published an editorial that went beyond just calling for de-intensification of the industry, of the pork and poultry industries. The editorial questioned the prudence of raising so many animals for slaughter in the first place. It is curious that changing the way humans treat animals, most basically ceasing to eat them, or at the very least radically limiting the quantity of them that is eaten, is largely off the radar as a significant preventive measure. But such a change, if sufficiently adopted or enforced, could still reduce the chances of the much-feared influenza pandemic. It would even more likely prevent unknown future diseases that, in the absence of the change, may result from farming animals intensively and killing animals for food. Yet humanity, it goes on to say, doesn't even apparently consider this option. Right? We don't tend to shore up the levees until after the disaster strikes. The editorial concludes, those who consume animals not only harm those animals and endanger themselves, but they also threaten the well-being of future generations. It is time for humans to remove their heads from the sand, they say, and recognize the risk to themselves that can arise from the maltreatment of other species. How we treat animals can have global public health implications. Let me end with a quote from the World Health Organization. The bottom line is that people have to think about how they treat their animals. Basically, the whole relationship between the animal kingdom and the human kingdom is coming under stress. In this age of emerging diseases, we now have billions of curly-tailed and feathered test tubes for viruses to incubate and mutate within billions more spins at pandemic roulette. But along with human culpability comes hope. If changes in human behavior can cause new plagues, well then changes in human behavior may prevent them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael Greger. The information you have given us is truly thought-provoking.
Piano is one of the musical instruments originally designed to reproduce higher universal frequencies. Let's listen to some piano music now that will lift our spirits.
Our next performer was born in Vietnam. Miss Nguyen Phong showed musical talent very early. When she was only 7, she won a scholarship to study at the prestigious conservatory. She has won 7 gold medals at piano and organ contests and recently became the first Vietnamese student to receive a scholarship to attend Berklee College of Music in Boston. She will be playing My Favorite Things. Please give a warm welcome to Ms. Nguyen Phong.
Fong, for sharing your uplifting music with us.
Yes, it was truly uplifting.
My name is Dr. Michael Greger. I'm the Director of Public Health and Animal Agriculture at the Humane Society of the United States and its international arm, Humane Society International. I'm just very pleased to be here, and I'm so glad that this message is getting out there. You know, the World Watch Institute, a prestigious environmental think tank here in the United States, just last month published a report suggesting that the majority of anthropogenic or human-induced greenhouse gas emissions come not from transportation, but from animal agriculture worldwide, suggesting that it would be better for the planet if we all transition to a plant-based diet, even better for the planet than if we got rid of all cars, trucks, and ship combined and moved over to renewable energies. And so I think that really, particularly as Copenhagen comes up in December, it really underscores the need for us to make radical changes in society for our future generations.
What did you think of today's conference? What kind of impact did it have on you?
I loved every minute of it. It's the same message that we've always been speaking about. It's now just a lot more prevalent, I would think, when that's love. And of course, be vegan. I don't think people really should be calling vegans. I think they should just be calling them passionate people who believe in saving the planet. So if you want to save the planet, then you know what to do.
Veganism is a great way to take on climate change, for sure.
And what is your impression of Supreme Master Ching Hai, given the fact that you just heard her speak?
She seemed really nice, really nice. And like I said, you know, she makes a great point about the vegan diet. And that combined with, you know, moving away from fossil fuels and towards clean renewable resources, making sure we pay attention to science-based solutions, that's exactly how we're going to create a peaceful, green future.
All information concerning the scientific evidence of climate change and its solution is in Supreme Master Ching Hai's book, From Crisis to Peace, free for download at crisistopeace.org.
Peace-loving viewers, we appreciate your presence today on Words of Wisdom.